Now, two men in monks' cassocks moved silently down the stone passageway of Old Hill Monastery. They opened and closed a heavy Gothic door and walked across the carpeted room. One of the men removed his monk's robe, revealing the uniform of a colonel in the British Army.
Nearly 12 o'clock, Baxter.
Yes, Colonel James.
Better do a round. Take a walkie-talkie and report back.
Very good.
Baxter helped himself to a walkie-talkie from the cupboard and left Colonel James to some paperwork on the desk. A short while later, in the passageway beneath, Baxter paused at each of the monks' cells. They were all heavily bolted on the outside, for Old Hill Monastery was a prison for captured spies. Episode 1 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel celebrate a little too soon, and an enemy makes a killing and a clean getaway. Old Hill Monastery is a small but formidable Gothic structure with battlements and turreted windows. It sits sedately in the fields near Marlow and commands a clear view of the Thames. To the inhabitants of the nearby towns, it is thought of as a closed order of holy monks. But it is staffed by highly trained army officers and contains over 100 of the most dangerous captured enemy agents in all England. Lieutenant Baxter, pulling his monk's robe more tightly around him, moved down the passage, looking in at each of the grills.
There's Dorf. Yes, he's reading as usual. Lubin. Playing chess again. How a man can play chess against himself beats me. Who wins? Rostov? You hear me? Show yourself.
Baxter, peering into one of the cells, was unable to see the inmate. Without hesitation, he switched on the walkie-talkie and reported the fact to Colonel James.
Baxter to Colonel James.
Come in, Baxter. What is it?
I can't see Rostov in his cell.
You think he may have passed out in the bath?
Maybe. I can't tell for sure. I can only see the frosted glass partition.
All right. Well, you better carry out a routine thickness check.
Baxter immediately removed the monk's robe and took a service revolver from its holster.
Ready when you are, sir.
Give the password.
Apricot.
In his office, Colonel James leaned forward and pressed a button on the panel. The bolts on cell number 3 slid back automatically. Baxter squared his shoulders, tensed his muscles, kicked open the door, and entered the cell in a practiced rush.
Let's have you.
Baxter, confident and alert, peered around the cell. He moved across to the bathroom. It was empty. So was the rest of the cell. Quite empty. The figure of the prisoner seemed to appear by magic through the wall.
What the devil?
Before Baxter could recover from his surprise, Rostov landed a terrific blow, knocking him over the table. In his office, Colonel James heard the sound over the walkie-talkie.
Baxter! What's happened, Baxter?
Alarm. Sound alarm. Rostov. Taken my gun and escaped.
Colonel James moved like lightning. His hand went out and set the alarm bells ringing. Instantly, from all over the monastery, men began running at the double to the cell.
There he goes! Get him!
Rostov, at the end of the passageway, whipped off a few warning shots and raced to the next corridor.
But there's no one there. Just a blank wall. He couldn't have got away. Yet he's disappeared.
John Steed was having a party in his apartment. It was a small reunion. Steed had 2 old pals, fellow agents, Paul Ryder and George Neville. The 3 men were in dinner jackets. Mrs. Peel was with them, wearing a stunning full-length gown. It was all very smart and select, and it had got to the last drink and cigar stage.
Indeed. Did you ever see anything more of that Admiral, what was his name? Pebbly chap, heavy breather.
Well, surely that description can fit any admiral in the British Navy.
Not quite sure who you mean, Paul.
I want to propose a toast.
Oh, you must remember the old boy.
A toast, I insist.
All right, a toast.
To our benevolent host, the man you can always trust, the man you can always rely on, to the man with...
With the wooden leg.
Eh? Steed hasn't got a wooden leg. Have you, Steed? If you have, I must say you can't off very well. I'd never have guessed.
Admiral Corman, that's who I was thinking. Ah, yes, Corman. Yes, of course I remember.
I give you John Steed. Oh, glass is empty.
Oh, let me.
Thank
John Steed.
Yes, John Steed. And another toast to John Steed's partner in crime. I must say, Steed, you certainly know how to pick 'em. She's delectable, she's delicious, she's
also a dab hand with a caviar canopy.
Gentlemen, I give you Emma Peel.
Emma
Peel. And another toast.
No, now it's my turn. To Paul Ryder and George Neville. We trained together, we fought together, and I hope we'll remain together for many years to come.
Steed drank and shattered his glass in the fireplace. The simplicity and sincerity of his speech moved them all. Out of a pause, George Neville said,
Oh dear, it's gone all solemn. Positively sepulchral.
That'll never do, will it?
No, because we've never been solemn. Not even in the tightest spot. Not even during the EBA, Steed, remember that?
Oh, yes. The EBA.
Ah, the EBA.
The EBA? European bombing attack?
The exploding bootlaces affair.
Then there was the DCP.
DCP?
The diabolical cipher plan.
And the GAP.
Fill that gap in for me, will you please, Steve?
The great assassination plot.
And what about the GTR?
Ah, yes, the GTR.
We couldn't possibly overlook the GTR.
Great train robbery?
Granny Tittyfeather's rum, homemade.
Kicked like a mill.
Fortified us during dawn vigils.
Yes, and talking of dawn, I think it's time I was off.
Oh, no, one more, surely.
No, it's gone 5, you know.
5 in the morning? Oh, it can't be, surely.
Mrs. Peel moved to the window and drew aside the curtains. The cold light of dawn flooded into the room. Down in the street, the mews was deserted.
Well, it's home with the milkman then, isn't it? I think our walk is not far, and it'll do me good. Well, thanks for everything, Steve. Next time to my place. Goodbye, Emma. Great pleasure meeting you. See you all again soon. I can let myself out, so don't worry. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, old chap.
Bye.
Well, how about you, George, old man?
Well, I'm very easily led, and the prospect of even 5 minutes more with the delectable Mrs. Peel.
I agree. Another bottle?
Well, thank you both. I'll join you. Delicious. Champagne at dawn. It's quite the nicest time.
Mrs. Peel looked down into the street and saw the stocky figure of Paul Ryder walk down the mews in the direction of the park. She didn't see another man standing silently in the shadows watching Steed's apartment. Sometime later...
And now, I really must go. It's been a memorable night, Steed. Made doubly memorable by your presence, Mrs. Peel.
Why, thank you.
And, as Paul says, we must all do it again very soon. That is, if enemy agents permitting, of course.
Well, that's always true. I'm sure I can't run you somewhere. Car's in the garage. Won't take a minute.
No, I won't hear of it. I'll grab a taxi at the end of the road. Here's the coat. Bye, Emma. Stay beautiful. Bye, Steed. Call you later in the week.
Yes, do that. Bye, George.
Wow, I'm tired. A hard day's night. But I like them. I like them both very much. And so do you, don't you, Steve?
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. They're two of the best in the game. Don't come any better. Even Mother has to admit that.
I suppose you should have invited Mother.
Oh, but my best champagne. There wouldn't be a bottle left.
Well, there's not much now, is there?
No, so we'd better finish it up, hadn't we, Mrs. Peel?
Down in the street, George Neville turned up his coat collar against the chill dawn and quickened his walk. Near the corner of the mews he stopped. A voice from the shadows said,
Neville. George Neville. Here. What the devil?
Neville took a pace towards the voice. The figure of Rostov appeared near the blank wall like magic. Neville reached for the gun in his shoulder holster, but too late. Rostov had a gun trained on him and fired it several times. George Neville had spun round by the impact of the bullets. He fell among the dustbins. Steed and Mrs. Peel, hearing the shots, tore out of Steed's apartment.
George! George! Neville!
Steed? Steed, is he all right?
George, who did it?
George Neville managed to gasp out,
Rostov. Was Rostov.
and then he died in Steed's arms. George Neville, walking in the dawn light of the mews in which Steed lived, was stopped by a voice from the shadows.
Neville. George Neville. Here.
What the devil?
The impact of the bullets spun George Neville round, and he fell among the dustbins. John Steed and Emma Peel, hearing the shots, tore out of Steed's apartment.
George! George, what the... George!
Steed? Steed, is he...
George, who did it? It was Rostov.
Episode 2 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel find themselves up against prisoners who are their arch enemies, prisoners who are determined to get away. John Steed had held a small reunion with two of his best friends, Paul Ryder and George Neville. Mrs. Peel had also graced the occasion, which had been a great success, starting with cocktails and dinner and continuing with music and reminiscences until the early, or rather the late, hours of the morning. Paul Ryder had left first, walking home through the park. George Neville had left after helping Steed and Mrs. Peel drink champagne in the chilly light of dawn. Then, as Steed and Mrs. Peel were clearing away the party debris, they heard the shots from the street below. Neville had died in Steed's arms, naming his murderer. Later that morning, Steed rang Mrs. Peel at her apartment.
Hello?
Steed here.
Oh, Steed, I was hoping you'd ring. Do we meet this morning?
Not yet. I'm going down to Marlow, Old Hill Monastery. I'll call you from there later.
A monastery?
It's a cover for an international spy prison. The man who killed George Neville escaped from there. I'm hoping to pick up a lead.
You think this is serious, don't you? Neville being killed?
Just about the most serious thing that's happened yet. Could be the beginning. I'll keep in touch.
Oh, please do. I'll help all I can.
I know you will.
And Steed, I'm so sorry.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Down at Old Hill Monastery, Steed submitted his pass to a monk at the gate and was allowed into the main building. Colonel James rose from behind his desk in his office.
Oh, Steed, good to see you.
Colonel?
Take a seat.
I prefer to stand if you don't mind. George Neville is dead. You know that.
I heard. Yes, sorry. He was a good friend of yours, wasn't he?
He was one of my best friends. Now, Colonel, why the devil didn't you warn him?
Warn him of what?
That Rostov had escaped.
The news of Rostov's breakout was circulated through all the normal channels.
Colonel, you should have warned George personally, and immediately it happened.
Steed, I'm sorry. I don't entirely follow you. Why George Neville in particular?
You don't know? You knew why Rostov was being held here in maximum security.
Of course. Well, he was involved in the great assassination plot. He, Lubin, and Esdorf.
Is that all you know about?
Steed, it is my duty to maintain security in this building. We have more than 100 of the most dangerous agents in the Western Hemisphere incarcerated here. I can't be expected to be familiar with every detail of their crimes.
Bureaucratic bungling.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, you can't be blamed, but someone should have made sure that you knew the whole story. Well, in this case, anyway.
I don't understand.
Colonel, the great assassination plot was very simple. 3 of their top agents were smuggled into England to kill 3 of our top agents. Each of them had a target, and Rostov's mission was to murder George Neville. Mission accomplished.
Steed,
Steed, I had no idea.
I know. Well, the thing to do now is to stop it happening again. That means we've got to find out how Rostov escaped. Show me his cell, would you?
Yes.
James made the necessary security precautions and took Steed down to the cells.
Well, I just don't know how it could have happened. Well, this place is built like a fortress, and you know how tight internal security is. No one can open a cell door without the right password, and that's changed every hour. Here we are. Now, this is Rostov's cell. Ah, Baxter. This is John Steed, Lieutenant Baxter. He was first on the scene.
Tell me what happened, Baxter.
I was making a routine check, and he wasn't in his cell. The cell was empty. I reported, got permission to enter. And when you stepped in, you found he was here, eh, Baxter?
Steed moved around the cell, noting the barred window, testing it, testing the walls, going to the table which contained personal possessions. There were several magazines, most of them on natural history, a couple of bottles of liquor, an empty vodka bottle used as a flower vase with a single flower in it. Steed listened to Baxter at the same time.
I swear to you, sir, I did check through the scanner of the whole area, and he wasn't in here. What about the bars? He couldn't have been hiding there. He was just not in the cell.
And then?
Well, then he appeared right beside me. He just appeared, like magic, eh, Baxter? Well, yes. All right, that'll do. You can go. Thank you, sir. Mr. Steed. His story's unacceptable, of course. Rostov must have been hiding in here somewhere, and yet I don't know. I wouldn't have thought Baxter was the type to make mistakes.
Plus the fact that there just isn't anywhere a man could hide in here. Could Rostov have tampered with the scanner?
Well, we've checked it. Results negative.
Let's see. Baxter entered here, searched around in the bathroom, then came back, and Rostov materialized here, right?
Right.
He clobbers Baxter, like that, and makes out of the door. Well, then where?
James led Steed down the passageway and round the corner. Facing them was a bricked-up wall.
Here. He disappeared right here.
Solid enough wall.
I told you. The whole thing's impossible.
And yet it happened, Colonel. It happened. The hourly check?
Half hourly. We've stepped things up since Rostov got away. I'll do a round myself.
Mind if I come along?
James led Steed down the passageway, and they inspected each cell. Outside Lubin's cell, they stopped.
Lubin, reading a magazine. Looks harmless enough.
Steed, you said each of these three men had an assigned target.
Yes, that's right.
Who was Lubin's?
Paul Ryder.
They stopped outside Esdorf's cell.
And his? Esdorf?
He was the ringleader, the most dangerous of the three, and the toughest.
Yes, but his target. Who was he sent to kill?
We don't know. We interrogated him for weeks. We couldn't break him. He never told us who his target was. I'd like to talk to this man, if you don't mind.
Oh, very well.
Colonel James produced a walkie-talkie and called his office.
Oh, Edwards, open up Esdorf's cell, please. Password, Colonel? Damson. Right, sir.
Esdorf, come in, Steed. Come in. I've been expecting you. After Rostov's escape, it was inevitable that you would come to question me. Let me look at you. You don't change.
Nor you.
Externally, perhaps not. You got the great pains to ensure my physical fitness, but internally, yes, inside that changed very much. I'm resolute.
Well, you were always that.
More resolute. And bitter. Incredibly bitter. A drink.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, Steed. Good to know that you're still alive.
Oh, I never thought I'd hear you say that.
Let me give you a toast. To freedom. It's been a long, long time.
How do you occupy yourself? You have no books.
I think. I ruminate. I plan. I'm immensely proud of Rostov, of course. I trained him, you see. He's my protege, and he's free. And when Lubin has gone too...
Lubin?
Oh, he will be next. You can't keep us here much longer. First Rostov, then Lubin, and then me.
You're bluffing.
Perhaps. Or perhaps not.
Steed heard the warning bells. It could only mean another escape. He leapt to the door.
Let me out of here! You hear? Let me out! Let me out!
In the corridor, all was confusion. Colonel James was leaning against the wall, holding his head.
Who was it?
Lubin, I didn't see him.
Well, where is he?
He must have come up behind me, and he's heading for the east wing. Oh, don't worry. He can't get away. The men are converging on him. Where's the walkie-talkie? Edwards! Bright scarlet alert. Warn all exterior guards. Nobody and nothing to leave the ground without a triple check. Personal transport, supply wagons, a lot.
Right, sir. Sir, Colonel James, what is it? You got him? No. The men converged upon him from both sides of the east wing. They met, they heard his footsteps, and then they stopped. The prisoner just disappeared.
Emma Peel?
Mrs. Peel, it's an urgent job. Get to Paul Ryder. He's just moved and taken the house on the other side of the park. Now, I don't know the address, and he hasn't yet got a phone number, but get to him.
Message received, right. But why, Steve?
There's been another getaway. Now, get hold of Ryder and warn him. Tell him that Lubin is free. That's all. Tell him Lubin is free.
Right.
Get going, Mrs. Peel.
Steed. It's an urgent job. Get to Paul Ryder. He's just moved and taken a house on the other side of the park. Now, I don't know the address, and he hasn't yet got a phone number. But find out from the ministry. Mother will know. You get to Paul Ryder as soon as you can, understand?
Message received, right, Steve. But why, Steve?
Well, there's been another escape from here, the Old Hill Monastery. Now, you must get hold of Ryder and tell him that Lubin is out. You got it?
Lubin is out.
Lubin broke out of here a short while ago, and if he gets to Ryder, one thing is certain. He'll kill him.
Episode 3 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel encounter another killing and receive another threat by an enemy to achieve a getaway. John Steed had been horrified when George Neville, one of his best friends and one of the finest secret agents in Britain, had been murdered. Steed knew who the killer was because Neville had managed to gasp out the name, Rostov, before he died. Rostov, Steed knew, was one of the 3 men sent to England to kill 3 top British agents in the case known as the Great Assassination Plot. The plot had failed, and the 3 men, Rostov, Lubin, and Esdorf, had been captured and imprisoned in Old Hill Monastery, a tightly guarded Gothic building near London. Steed had visited the monastery and been present when the second escape had been effected. Lubin had got away. Steed, knowing that Lubin's target was Paul Ryder, had hastened to the phone to alert Mrs. Peel. Mrs. Peel got on with the task straight away, but she had a little difficulty in finding Ryder's new address. It was a new house on the other side of the park. Ryder himself was doing a little decorating, standing on a ladder, painting a cupboard in the bathroom bright red, when he heard a voice calling,
Ryder. Ryder.
Who is it? I'm coming.
Ryder climbed down the step-ladder and walked into his bedroom. The voice called again, echoing round the half-empty house.
Ryder. Ryder. I'm going to kill you, Ryder.
What the devil? Who are you? And where are you?
Ryder walked from the bedroom into his sitting room.
I've come to kill you, Ryder. I'm in the bathroom now.
Ryder retraced his steps back into the bathroom.
I'm going to complete my assignment. But first, I'd like you to see me.
Ryder, who'd been staring around him at the white-tiled walls, suddenly found himself face-to-face with Lubin. Lubin held a gun in one hand. Ryder backed away, crashed into the step-ladder as Lubin fired. just arrived in her car outside the house when she heard the shot. She leapt from the car and tore up the driveway into the house. The front door was open. She rushed in.
Paul? Paul, where are you, Paul?
From under the bathroom door flowed a bright red trickle. Mrs. Peel stopped, and then, characteristically and courageously, kicked the door open and shot in.
Paul? Paul!
Mrs. Peel saw the dead man lying in a pool of red paint that oozed from the paint tin. She glanced around. There were footsteps in the paint, red footprints that led to about a foot from the wall. Mrs. Peel looked around with confusion, and then she heard...
What the devil?
There, in front of her eyes, were red footprints forming, walking through the open door and down the corridor, slowly fading as the paint wore off, fading into nothing. In Steed's apartment, later...
Paul Ryder. They got Paul Ryder. They got him.
I'm sorry, Steve.
And you were there seconds later.
Split seconds. I heard the shots ran into the house and...
No Lubin.
No Lubin. But he couldn't have got past me, Steve. It was just plain impossible.
The whole business is impossible. Lubin appears, then he disappears.
Steve, you don't believe in invisible men, do you?
No, I most certainly do not.
Steed walked across to his briefcase and opened it, producing a vodka bottle.
Well, there's only one course left, ma'am.
Steve, that isn't the answer.
Huh?
Alcohol won't help. You've got to be strong.
That is a clue. That vodka. Intoxicating liquor. You know, I'm sure Lubin was a teetotaler.
Well, it's easy to check on. Bound to be on file, isn't it? Do you want me to check at the ministry?
Yes, well, I'll check at the monastery.
So, Steed went back to Old Hill Monastery and checked with Colonel James.
You know, I think you're right, Steed. Lubin didn't drink when he first came here. Then a month or two ago, he put in a request to allow him a liquor ration. But we let them have a bottle a month, you know. Do you think it might have some bearing upon things?
Perhaps. Don't see how. I imagine you check every bottle.
I do better than that. I sample them personally. This one's rather a good blend.
There's possibly nothing in it. Lubin probably took the drink through sheer boredom. Esdorf.
What about him?
He's the only one of the trio left, Colonel.
We've trebled the guard and make spot checks right round the clock.
Guards and checks haven't done much good so far.
For pity's sake, Steve, what more can I do? Chains and manacles? If we have to resort to that, we might as well...
Go in the other side, yes. Yes, I agree. I'd like to see Esdorf again, all the same.
When Steed entered the cell, Esdorf was doing some physical exercises.
35. Steed again.
I thought all you did was think.
Think and plan. But a plan remains a plan unless one has the physical prowess to put it into action.
You're still planning to run away from us, Esdorf?
Run? No, I don't think I shall run. I shall walk. A measured tread. I shall regard my freedom as one does an exotic drink, a fine cigar, or a beautiful woman. I shall savor it, a pace at a time. Oh, no, Mr. Steed. I shall not be running.
You put on a fine show of confidence.
I'm also being incredibly well-mannered, delicately avoiding taboo subjects. I'm leaving you to mention the unmentionable. It begins with the letter L.
Lubin?
You brought it out into the open. I wanted to spare your feelings. Cheers.
Cheers.
What was it you said on the last occasion? You're bluffing. Well, was I? And now you say I am putting on a fine show of confidence. Well, am I?
So you will escape?
I will escape.
And complete your assignment?
Yeah. It has kept me sane all the time I have been here. The thought that one day, I would do what I was sent here to do. That I wouldn't be cheated of it. You can depend upon it. I will complete my assignment.
And who is your target?
You would like to know, wouldn't you?
Well, you've been so forthcoming about your escape. I should...
You would like to know who I was assigned to kill. You tried to extract that from me before, during the weeks of interrogation.
I told them they wouldn't break you. Not you. You're too good at your job, Esdorf.
Oh, better than you, Steed. Had the circumstances been reversed, would you have broken? I don't think so. They're evenly matched, you and I.
Perhaps. Well, I shall leave you.
That's why they chose me, of course.
Pardon?
I said, that's why they chose me. It amuses me to tell you this now, Steed. It's you, Steed. You are my target. You are the man I am going to kill.
Well, of course, after finding that out, I'll assign a special bodyguard to you, Steed.
Oh, that won't be necessary, thank you, Colonel.
Yeah, but if it's you Esdorf is after, if he gets out...
Then it's up to you to see that he doesn't get out, isn't it? Yes, the answer could lie with Dodge.
Dodge? You mean Professor Percival Dodge? The man who vetted this place and gave it its final clearance? The Ministry's pet escapologist?
That's right. He's what you might call a scientific Houdini. He's bound to have a few ideas tucked away. I'll go and see Dodge.
And so Steed did. In the Ministry of Technology, the sign on the door read, Prof. Percival Dodge, Testing Division, keep out. Steed entered.
Professor? Professor Dodge?
There was a sound from inside a large wall safe. The safe door swung open. The professor stepped out with the casualness of a man leaving a taxicab.
Ah, Steed, how are you?
Fine. And you, Professor?
In excellent health. Yes. I always say that if you can break out of a safe, you can invariably get in.
Oh, invariably.
I'm glad you agree. If we put our secrets in there, we might as well post them to the enemy. No, the safe's no good.
The professor reached out onto his desk, seized a rubber stamp, and stamped at the top of the safe, Reject.
When Dodge says it's secure, only then can you be sure. Yes, that's 3 safes they've reckoned lived up to the name. And they don't. As for that pile of locks, I unpicked them with a hairpin in 10 minutes flat. What have we got here? Handcuffs. Says they're escape-proof. Care to try them on, Steed?
Professor Dodge, without waiting for Steed's consent, slapped the handcuffs round his wrists. Steed looked a bit helpless.
Professor Dodge, it's about the Old Hill Monastery.
Oh, yes? My best piece of work. I have the plans here, strange enough. Perfect planning. No one could escape from there.
Rostov and Lubin managed it.
What? A getaway?
A got away. That's why I'm here.
That's impossible. It's escape-proof.
Escape-proof? Like these?
Steed twisted his wrists slightly and dropped the handcuffs onto the professor's desk. Then he reached for the rubber stamp and slapped it down on the Old Hill Monastery plans.
Reject, Professor? Any idea why?
Now.
Take these handcuffs, Mr. Steed. They're supposed to be escape-proof. Sent over here for testing, like the rest of this stuff. Care to try them on?
Well,
Now, what's your problem? Apart from getting out of the handcuffs?
It's about the Old Hill Monastery.
Oh, delightful place. I spent a whole month there whilst vetting it. Ideal for our purposes. No one could escape from there.
Rostov and Lubin managed it.
What? A getaway?
A got away. That's why I'm here.
Impossible. It's escape-proof.
Escape-proof? Like these handcuffs?
John Steed looked keenly at Professor Dodge as he slipped out of the handcuffs and threw them on the desk.
Oh, this is dreadful. My reputation is at stake. I shall inspect the whole of Old Hill Monastery from top to bottom, right now.
Episode 4 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel make some headway, but still can't explain how 2 top enemy agents made a getaway. Two of John Steed's best friends, both top British Secret Service agents, had been killed. They had met their deaths shortly after the escape of 2 foreign spies from the prison known as Old Hill Monastery. The escapes had been planned at different times, but were both carried out in a most mysterious manner. The prisoners, pursued and hemmed in by guards, had simply disappeared. Steed had consulted Professor Dodge, who had designed the monastery's security system. and sent Mrs. Peel to the ministry to check up on the personal habits of the three spies, Rostov and Lubin, who had made the escape, and Esdorf, the remaining and most dangerous agent, who swore he would also escape, and once free, would kill John Steed. Mrs. Peel asked for files on the three enemy agents.
Here you are, Mrs. Peel. The files on Rostov, Lubin, and Esdorf.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Peters.
Now, will you excuse me? It's feeding time.
Lunch already? Early, isn't it?
I believe in feeding at short intervals, every 25 minutes.
Pardon?
Delicious little ant eggs.
And eggs.
Oh, I often throw in a beetle or two, for hors d'oeuvres, so to speak. Oh, it's not for me, silly, it's for them.
Peters, with a nonchalant wave of the hand, indicated a glass tank.
Look at them, the little dears. Here, come and have some ant eggs.
Mrs. Peel stared, somewhat mystified, at the glass tank. It seemed to contain only rocks and plants.
Shouldn't they have some water in there?
They hardly ever drink.
I meant to swim in.
Lizards hardly swim. Mrs. Peel, they bask. That's the word, bask.
Oh, I see. Well, I don't see. I don't see any of them.
Oh, they're somewhere. They will hide away, but they are in there somewhere.
Are you sure?
Oh, well, of course I'm sure. That is, of course. Popsy, Alfred, Sidney, show yourselves, you naughty creatures. Popsy, come and have an ant egg.
Mrs. Peel turned away with an amused smile and picked up the files. She opened them, selected several papers and photographs. Clipped to one of the photographs was a piece of paper.
What's this, Mr. Peters?
Alfred, where are you? What's that? Oh, you may well ask.
Peters looked at the piece of paper, which had written upon it, CX, VIII, VI, XXV.
I am asking.
Roman numerals.
Well, yes, that had occurred to me. But why with the files?
We found a copy of that number in the sole of each man's shoe.
Rostov, Lubin, and Esdorf all carried this number?
Yes. It's obviously a code, but we've never been able to break it.
Julius Caesar's birthday.
What? Are you sure?
A joke, Mr. Peters.
Oh, a joke.
A joke. May I keep this for a while?
Certainly. And if you decipher it, you will let us know, won't you?
Oh, I shall, never fear. Bye, Mr. Peters.
Goodbye, Mrs. Peel. Now, where are you, my little pet? Alfred? Popsy?
Back in Steed's apartment, Mrs. Peel spent some time on the files and then turned her attention to the Roman numerals. She picked up one of Steed's books, Advanced Code Breaking. Couldn't even understand the first sentence and threw the book down. On the table were the personal possessions taken from Lubin's cell after he'd escaped. The copy of Bryant's Natural History magazine had an issue number printed under the title. It read,
Number of issue, CXV, III, VI. The coded number is CXV, III, VI, XXV. All that's lacking between the issue number of this magazine found in Lubin's cell and the code number they all carried is XXV. XXV is 25. Page 25. Oh, page 25 is missing. Torn out.
It didn't take Mrs. Peel long to find out the telephone number of Bryant's Natural History magazine. She got through at once and demanded to speak to the editor.
Bryant's Natural History magazine, Cedric Brown speaking.
Mrs. Emma Peel speaking from MI5. Important. We want to get hold of a back copy of your magazine.
Which issue do you want?
Well, I'm not attempting the translation. Issue CXV, III, VI. The special reptile issue.
Oh, yes. Well, there's no problem there. Remember it well. We have several copies left. I'm sure I can find you one. Just hold on a moment. You're at my desk. I think I have...
Mr. Bryant? Mr. Bryant, have you...
Mrs. Peel heard the click of the receiver being replaced at the other end. She slammed down the receiver into its cradle and ran out of Steed's apartment, heading for her car. In the cell inhabited by Rostov before his escape, Professor Dodge was testing the walls, each stone in turn.
Professor?
Oh, Steed, I do wish you wouldn't do that. You startled me.
Oh, I'm sorry. How are you getting on?
I've covered the east wing and Lubin's cell with a fine hammer. Solid. Granite. 2 feet thick. It'd take a lifetime to chisel through.
No chance of a secret panel, trapdoor?
No. Quite out of the question. I went over the place with a microscope. How anyone could escape from here bewilders me. Given time, I pride myself that there isn't a lock I couldn't pick or a safe I couldn't crack.
Yes.
Steed strolled over to Rostov's table. A few things were still lying on it. Steed picked up Bryant's Natural History magazine and thumbed through it.
What's this? Page missing. Page 25, huh?
Mrs. Peel had found the offices of Bryant's Natural History magazine and was mounting the stairs, while inside the office, Lubin was making sure of a few things.
This should stop any further investigation. Nothing important is left. All the papers burned in the metal waste paper basket.
Lubin stopped as Mrs. Peel's footsteps came along the corridor. She tried the door. It was locked. Lubin faded back into the shadows. Mrs. Peel had never let a locked door stop her in her life. Lubin, in the shadows, pulled up the hood of his duffel coat and remained in hiding. Mrs. Peel, smelling the burning papers, advanced cautiously to the wastepaper basket. It was then that she saw Cedric Bryant's body lying by the desk. She moved over, knelt beside him, and turned him over.
Let's see. Dead, all right. What's this?
Beneath the dead man was a copy of a magazine.
The Special Reptile issue.
She picked it up, but a voice behind her said,
I'll take that.
Certainly.
Mrs. Peel chopped the gun from Lubin's fist. He threw her across the room. Mrs. Peel fell heavily. Lubin plunged forward. Mrs. Peel scrambled to her feet and sidestepped. Lubin, unable to stop, tore forward and crashed through the plate glass window. Mrs. Peel hurried to the window and looked down. There was no one there. A few minutes later, she noticed a small van drive away. The van carried a name, Magnus Importing Co. Otherwise, the street was deserted, and the pavement empty.
The Natural History magazine, special reptile issue. It came from Rostov's cell.
Oh, don't tell me, Steed. I know. Page 25 is missing.
How do you know?
It's really very simple.
In Steed's apartment, Mrs. Peel paused from sipping a cup of tea and traced the Roman numeral code number on top of the magazine, pointing out matching figures with a delicately polished fingernail.
Mrs. Peel, do you realize that this stumped our greatest cipher experts?
Oh, it's just one of those lucky breaks. Happens.
They'll probably give you a medal. They might even make you a dame.
Wouldn't it sound rather vulgar? Dame Mrs. Emma Peel?
Oh, Mrs. Peel, nothing you wear, not even a name, could be vulgar. So you went to Bryant's place and found him dead?
And Lubin went straight through the window and disappeared.
With the last remaining complete copy of the magazine?
Oh, no. Lubin went, but the magazine remained. Here, turn to page 25.
Ah, here we are. Lizards and their habits.
I've read it. It's, rather intimate.
Oh, disgusting habits, in fact.
Awful. And terribly crafty. They hide from their enemies by merging with the background.
Lizards. How do lizards fit in with all this? Where's the link between lizards and...
Lizards.
Lizards. Wait a minute. Where's that empty vodka bottle that came from Lubin's cell? Ah, here we are. Just look at that label.
Lizard vodka. Full strength.
So you went to Bryant's office and found him dead, Mrs. Peel?
That's right. I had a little argument with Lubin. He went straight through the window and disappeared.
With the last remaining complete copy of the special reptile issue of the Natural History magazine?
Oh, no. Lubin went, but the magazine remained. Here, turn to page 25, please.
Ah, here we are. Lizards and their habits.
I've read it. It's rather intimate.
Disgusting habits, in fact.
Awful. Terribly crafty. They hide from their enemies by merging with the background.
Lizards. Now, what have lizards got to do with the escape of 3 agents from an inescapable fortress? Wait Where's that empty vodka bottle that came from Lubin's cell? Here we are. Well, just look at that label.
Lizard vodka, full strength.
Episode 5 of this story, in which John Steed accepts a challenge and Emma Peel begins to realize how their enemies have managed to make their getaway. Rostov and Lubin, two dangerous secret agents, had escaped from the prison of Old Hill Monastery. Rostov had killed George Neville and disappeared. Assignment accomplished. Lubin had killed twice Paul Ryder and Cedric Bryant before crashing through a window and disappearing. Mrs. Peel couldn't believe that he could have survived the fall from the 5th floor, but the street had been deserted and the pavement empty. Back in Steed's apartment, over a welcome cup of tea, they studied a few other clues, including page 25 of a special issue of Bryant's Natural History magazine.
There's got to be a connection. Page 25 is all about lizards and their habits. The name on the vodka bottle is Lizard.
Coincidence or proof? What proof?
What's his full strength here? Sorry. The Magnus Importing Company.
What was that? Hey, let me see that bottle. Oh, dear.
Yes? What is it, Mrs. Peel?
Well, after Lubin fell out of the window, I naturally went to look. There was a van in the street, the only vehicle about. Painted on the side was the name...
Magnus Importing Company.
That's right.
Right. I'll pay them a visit. Now, you get back to Peter's and take back the files. Study those lizards and their disgusting habits. Get Peters onto that page. The article might be in code. Well, come on, Mrs. Peel. At least we're getting somewhere, even if we're moving at the rate of snails and not lizards. Let's go.
Steed found that the Magnus Importing Company had their offices in front of a warehouse near the river. Unable to make himself known at the front, Steed went round to the warehouse entrance and prodded open the back door with his umbrella. Steed walked between lines of crates towards a pool of light at the far end of the darkened room. A man stepped out suddenly.
Yeah?
Right at last. I'm looking for Mr. Magnus.
You found him.
The man stooped suddenly and hid a bottle away under a crate.
Vodka.
Vodka?
Or to be precise, lizard vodka. I'm told it's excellent. I thought I'd order a crate or two.
Impossible.
Impossible?
We don't stock that line anymore.
Oh, dear, but surely you've got just one bottle somewhere?
Not even one bottle.
Oh, I see. If you do happen to get another consignment,
We won't. We've finished with lizard vodka. For good.
Oh. Well, sorry to have bothered you then.
Bye. Steed moved off slowly, aware that Magnus stooped to retrieve the bottle on the floor. He picked it up. It was a bottle of lizard vodka. Very carefully, he attached a label to the neck. It read, Express Delivery, Martin Esdorf. In his cell at Old Hill Monastery, Martin Esdorf paced up and down. His mood had changed. He was an impatient man. He swung round as the cell door clattered open and then slammed to. John Steed entered with a parcel.
Beware of Steed bearing gifts.
Oh, it's not a gift exactly, Esdorf. You ordered it. You did order this, didn't you? Lizard vodka?
Yeah, that's right, I did.
It's a brand I don't know.
Does that mean that you would like to try it? His pleasure. Allow me.
As Esdorf poured the vodka, Steed wandered around the cell. He stopped at the table and flipped a couple of pages over in Bryant's Natural History magazine. Esdorf watched him.
Steed? Your vodka.
Oh, sorry. You know, the secret could be in here.
Steed tapped the magazine. Esdorf's eyes flickered.
The secret to your character. Well, that's the saying, isn't it? Judge a man by the books he reads. Smooth.
Smooth. But I would think that Colonel James would consider it a trifle on the dry side.
Yes, perhaps. But I expected books on mechanics, history, even geography. I must say this one surprises me. Natural history.
Then a man has nothing else to do.
But toads and lizards. I wouldn't have thought lizards were in your line, Esdorf.
You're getting closer, Steed. Very close, but you will never be close enough. Perhaps answer isn't here, in this magazine. Here, take it. Study it. Join, quote it. You will find never the answer, if there is an answer to be found. But I admire you, Steed. I really do. You're incisive, thorough, relentless, a worthy adversary. We are equally matched. We are very alike, you and I. Identical, in fact.
No.
There's a difference. We are both dedicated to our country, both prepared to die for it. You have killed, I have killed.
There is a difference. I only kill when I have to. You, because you like it.
We are merely debating with the grace on the real issue. How, Steed? How? How will I escape from here? You can't stop me, Steed. You won't be able to. And then, when I'm free, we will face each other, you and I. There will be you, there will be me. And snuggled in my hand will be a sleek, well-oiled, shiny Cambretta.
I prefer a Brown and Thiessen Magnum, myself.
I remember that. Oh, yes. I remember that. You have chosen the weapons, Steed.
Now you're going to turn all English and say, let the best man win.
Oh, I shall, Steed. I shall.
Mrs. Peel headed back to Peter's office at the ministry and turned in the 3 files.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Peel.
Oh, you better have this. A slip of paper with the Roman numerals on it. I shan't need that anymore. I know what it means.
You do? You mean you cracked the code?
Oh, quite simple, really. Nothing you need worry your head about. But you might like this.
A copy of the Natural History magazine. An article on lizards. Oh, how very kind and thoughtful of you, Mrs. Peel. My hobby.
Yes. Other people's as well, it seems. Now, why should Rostov and Lubin be interested in lizards?
I can't think. Except, of course, that they make such delightful pets. Now take this one. Here, from the aquarium. This is Alfred. Isn't he a dear? Charming little thing. And one never tires of them because they're forever changing color.
Yes. Yes, of course they are.
Yes, you see, Alfred is a true chameleon. All chameleons change color, of course. It's something to do with the chromophores in the skin. They merge with the background. Let me show you.
Peters took the chameleon from the brown earth, where it had been standing almost undetected, and placed it on the green blotter of his desk. The chameleon began to change color.
Nature's camouflage. Astonishing, isn't it? You would never know he was there, would you? He's practically disappearing before our eyes.
Yes. Yes, of course. Of course, that's it.
From the bars of his cell, Martin Esdorf was able to see John Steed leave the monastery grounds. It was then, with a thin-lipped smile of triumph, that he carried the vodka bottle into the bathroom of his cell. He opened the bottle and poured the contents down the sink. Then he twisted the neck of the bottle in the other direction. This opened the lower half of the bottle. It was filled with a colorless liquid. Esdorf moved to a cupboard, selected a warm tracksuit, and he poured the liquid from the bottle into the bath and pressed the back of the tracksuit down into it. From the cell door, Baxter looked in.
Check in, Baxter.
That's right. This one isn't going to get away, I can tell you.
What's he doing?
Taking a bath. He always does about this time of the day. We'll give him a check on the scanner.
That's funny. I could have sworn it. He was in the bathroom a minute ago. I could see the shape of him through the frosted glass. Here, let me take a look. Baxter. It looks as though the cell's completely empty. Call the colonel.
Right. Colonel James. Baxter here, reporting from the cells.
What is it, Baxter? What's wrong?
It's Esdorf, sir. I can't see him anywhere. Price and I have been watching on the scanner. Should I take a look inside?
No, hold it. No, I'm coming down.
In a matter of minutes, Colonel James was with the 2 men in the corridor. Seconds later, he had agreed with them.
Give me the walkie-talkie. Hello there. Edwards, open up Esdorf's cell.
Password, sir.
Damson.
It's after 5, sir.
Oh, for heaven's sake, man. Raspberry, then.
Yes, sir.
Careful, men. Guns at the ready. Follow me.
The 3 men stepped into the cell. There was no one there.
No one here. No one at all. I could have sworn...
An arm seemed to come from nowhere and hand-chopped Baxter at the back of the neck. Seconds later...
Baxter, what is it? What did you...
Price staggered and fell over Baxter's body. Colonel James wheeled round, coming back into the main part of the cell from the bathroom.
What the devil? Baxter? Price? What happened?
Even the colonel didn't know what hit him. Seconds later, the cell door slammed. Esdorf was free.
Now.
Careful now, men. Guns at the ready. Follow me.
There's no one here. No one at all. I could have sworn that Esdorf was having a bath. I saw him through the frosted glass, then on the scanner, he seemed to disappear. I could have sworn that...
An arm seemed to come out of nowhere and hand-chopped Baxter at the back of his neck. Seconds later...
Baxter, what is it? What is it?
Price staggered and fell over Baxter's body. Colonel James, who'd been inspecting the bathroom, wheeled round and came back into the main cell.
What the devil? Baxter! Price, what happened? Are you...
Seconds later, there was a slam of the cell door. Martin Esdorf was free. Episode 6, the final episode of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel realize how they have been tricked, but manage to survive to achieve the final getaway. John Steed knew his bitterest and deadliest enemy was Martin Esdorf, who had sworn to complete the task for which he had been sent to England. That assignment had as its target John Steed. Esdorf had sworn to Steed's face that he would kill him, and had even boasted that he would use Steed's favorite weapon, a Brown & Thiessen Magnum, to do the crime. John Steed had left Esdorf in the now doubtful security of the Old Hill Monastery and returned to his apartment to think things out. Mrs. Peel had been investigating the habits of lizards, in particular chameleons, and thought she'd stumbled over the truth, but for the life of her she couldn't see how it was done. Meanwhile, Martin Esdorf had got away and made the cover of the warehouse of the Magnus Importing Company.
That is the trouble with our people. They will underestimate the opposition. We laugh at Steed with his bowl and umbrella, but he can be more deadly than any other I have ever met on either side.
You think he knows?
He may suspect something. He can't know. How can he know? I don't actually know how it works myself. Well, I understand the main principle. Which...
The same principle as the chameleon.
A humble little creature. Strange makeup. The need to hide.
We've taken things a little further, that's all. A pigmented plastoid. More concentrated and spontaneous than that remarkable little lizard. One takes this concentrate, pours it on the correct material.
And it will assume the color and texture of the background against which it is placed. So perfect camouflage. And it works.
Now you're free. You have everything you need. Passport, clothes. Particularly that tracksuit treated with the camouflage solution.
I need a gun.
Oh, here's your gun. Your own Cambretta.
Yeah. My old friend... Oh, but no. No. I would like a Brown & Thiessen Magnum.
Eh? But you always prefer...
I would prefer on this occasion a Brown & Thiessen. Get it for me, and no arguments. You see, it's a joke. Yeah, it's a private joke between me and John Steed.
In his apartment, John Steed poured himself a large drink.
This case is going to put me right off vodka for good.
Steed sipped a scotch and stared down at the magazine in front of him. Opposite the page which contained the article on lizards was a large, full-color reproduction showing a very attractive girl in a bikini emptying the contents of a bottle of vodka onto a man in a suit who was lying on the floor. The caption read, "Runaway people escape their problems with lizard vodka."
Runaway people escape. And at the bottom of the advertisement, the name and address of Magnus Importing Company. Well, I had an idea I hadn't finished with Magnus.
Steed looked again at the way the girl was pouring the bottle. Then he picked up the empty one that Lubin had left in his cell.
Tip it up like this. Curious angle.
Steed held it up to the light.
It opens like this with an ordinary twist of the metal cap. But then there appears to be a second thread on the bottle neck.
Come on, Steed, you should have got it by now.
The thread runs the other way. Yes, twist it back and there's a second opening. Liquor can be separated into two compartments. Vodka in the top half, hence Esdorf was able to give me a drink. But what was the liquid in the bottom half of this bottle?
Only one way to find out, Steed.
Visit Magnus should tell me that.
Might, if you hurry. It's a pity about one-way streets in London. Steed, driving away from his apartment, might have seen Mrs. Peel driving to it, had they not been in separate parallel roads. While they were in the process of passing each other, Steed's telephone was ringing. Colonel James, making the call from Old Hill Monastery, sighed impatiently.
He's not answering.
Out then, sir?
Well, of course he's out. Trouble is, he could be anywhere.
It's essential that you get in touch with him?
Of course it is, man. The last time this happened was Lubin. We didn't warn Ryder in time, and Ryder was killed. The time before that, we didn't let George Neville know Rostov was out. Rostov got to Neville and killed him. Now Esdorf has escaped and is intent on killing Steed. Of course we've got to find Steed. I'll try just one more time.
Colonel James muttered angrily against the forces of fate in general and his own sad plight in particular, and dialed Steed's number. In Steed's apartment, Mrs. Peel, just entering, left the door open and flew to answer the call.
Steed?
No, Colonel James here from Old Hill Monastery. Isn't Steed there?
It doesn't seem to be. I heard the phone ringing as I rushed in. What is it, Colonel?
Bad news. Couldn't be really a bit worse. You've got to find Steed, Mrs. Peel. You've got to warn him that Esdorf is out.
Out?
Out. Escaped. Gone. And he's going to kill Steed.
Right. Don't worry. I'll do my best, Colonel. And my best had better be better than yours. Steed? Steed, is that you back? Thank goodness. They just phoned from...
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Martin Esdorf.
Steed entered the warehouse of Magnus Importing Company with a great deal of care. He moved along the line of crates to the desk where he'd last talked to Magnus. He looked around.
Yes. A crate of lizard vodka. Open, and a few bottles left inside. Well, this should tell me what I want to know.
Steed placed his umbrella and bowler on the desk, picked up the bottle, and gave it an expert twist in an anti-clockwise direction. The lower compartment of the bottle was full of a colourless liquid. Steed was about to pour some out when Magnus appeared from behind some crates. Steed heard the sound and swung round. Magnus levelled a gun, but Steed threw the bottle at him. It caught Magnus on the chin.
Yes, well, that'll keep you quiet for a bit. But just to make sure...
Steed picked up an empty crate and placed it over Magnus.
Well, it looks tidy anyway. Now, where was I? Ah, yes.
Steed opened another bottle of vodka from the crate and poured some liquid from the lower half over his bowler. The bowler began to turn as white as the wrapping paper it was resting on. Steed sighed.
So that's it. Now you see it, now you don't. The answer at last.
Time ticked on. An hour went by, and another. Esdorf seemed quite relaxed in Steed's apartment, but Mrs. Peel, who had not taken her eyes off the hand that held the gun, knew that there had been no chance to attack. Esdorf knew his job. He would make no ordinary assailant.
Forgive me. A sudden amusing thought. You wouldn't understand.
Try me.
It's rather like a riddle. I was trained never to turn my back on an enemy. That when my back was turned, I was most vulnerable. And yet, if I turn my back now, I become utterly invulnerable. I said you wouldn't understand.
Oh, but I do.
Oh, come now.
Like a chameleon, merging with the background. The 9th degree in camouflage.
Now I'm impressed.
It must be just the back of you that's treated with, whatever it is.
I'm very impressed. Steed's taste obviously extends beyond the more bourgeois trappings of life. You look like you do, and you have a brain. Remarkable. He's here outside the door. Come here. Stand in front of me. Feel this gun in your ribs. One move, and it shall last.
Steed, Esso!
There's no one there. Come here, you!
Esdorf, with amazing strength, grabbed Mrs. Peel and yanked her to her feet, pressing the gun to her head this time.
All right, Steed. It's you or this delectable creature. Come on, show yourself. Come on!
Pleasure. Here I am.
Steed? Steed, where did you spring from?
They forgot to dispose of Lubin's duffel coat. I put it on back to front. Put the kettle on for a cup of tea, will you, please, Mrs. Peel?
Later, Mrs. Peel, entering from the kitchen, couldn't see Steed at all. She put the tray down impatiently and said,
Steed? Steed, where are you?
Over here.
Now, where's over here? You aren't still playing games with that silly coat, are you?
Of course not. I'm over here behind the curtains fixing the window. Like to give me a hand? It's a very small chair. You'll have to stand very close. Come on up. That's better. Now, just hold this, will you? That's it. You've got very warm hands, Mrs. Peel.
Warm hands, cold heart. Steed, I think we need a holiday.
Why not? Anything to get away together. Draw the curtains, Mrs. Peel. It's so cozy in here.
The Avengers. Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers,